Hey everyone, glad you're here. I've got something to share that's been weighing on me for a while now. It's one of those thoughts that creeps in every time I hear about another breakup story. I keep asking myself the same thing. Why do so many people stay connected to their exes even after calling it quits? I mean, isn't the whole point of a breakup to end things? Yet somehow, people continue texting, calling, even hanging out as if nothing's changed. Am I just being old-fashioned for thinking that once it's over, it should really be over? Maybe I see it differently, but to me, keeping that door cracked open is like lying to yourself. You say you've moved on, but you're still holding on. That brings me to what I really want to talk about, a story that forced me to confront that exact question in the most personal way possible. It's the story of how things fell apart between me and my fiancée, Deborah. We go way back long, before we ever dated. Back then, she was stuck in a terrible relationship with someone I won't name, but let's just say he was toxic in every way. He made her second guess herself, left her walking on eggshells, constantly. One day, he'd be screaming. The next, he'd turn ice cold. And the things he did, it went beyond just emotional abuse. I watched from the sidelines as she endured it, never stepping in, never trying to play the savior. I knew that she had to leave on her own terms. Eventually, she did. It wasn't easy, far from it. But when she finally walked away, she was a shell of who she used to be. You could see it in her eyes, like the light had dimmed. I stayed close, offering her a safe space, not trying to pursue anything romantic, just being someone steady. Months later, once she'd started to rebuild herself, I asked her out. I wasn't sure she'd say yes, but she did, and everything just clicked from there. Maybe it was because we already had that emotional bond, or maybe because we both knew the red flags to avoid this time. Whatever it was, we fell fast and hard. Within a year and a half, we were engaged. We moved in together not long after. Felt like the logical next step. Honestly, those first few months were incredible. We were completely in sync, cooking dinners together, binge-watching shows, late-night walks. It all felt real and effortless. I genuinely believed we had something solid. I was convinced we were headed for a life together. But then, things started to shift subtle at first. It all began on a regular evening. I couldn't find my phone, so I picked up hers to call mine. Innocent, right? But when I opened her call history to dial, there it was. His name, her ex, sitting right there in the recent calls. And it wasn't from weeks or months ago, it was recent. My heart sank. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I checked the messages, hoping it was something simple, maybe closure or some one-time thing. But no, they had been talking, messaging back and forth like old friends. That didn't sit right with me, not after everything he put her through, not after all the stories she told me. I walked into a room where she was lying down and asked her directly, "Why are you talking to him again?" She looked shocked, didn't try to lie, didn't even deny it, just said it wasn't a big deal, they were chatting, that's all. He just wanted to check in, she claimed. I didn't scream or accuse. I told her how it made me feel, that it crossed a boundary. She had painted him as the villain of her past, someone she sworn never to let in again. Now here he was, casually messaging her like it was nothing. She paused, then said, "If it helps ease your mind, I'll stop talking to him. I don't want this to affect us." At the time, I felt a bit of relief. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe it was harmless. I wanted to believe that, so I moved on, thinking everything would go back to how it was. But it didn't. In the days that followed, I noticed subtle but undeniable changes. Deborah, who never really cared much about her phone before, suddenly became very guarded. She kept it close, no matter what she was doing. If she was folding laundry, the phone was in her pocket. If she went to the bathroom, it went with her. Even walking to the kitchen, she took it along. At first, I told myself I was reading too much into it. Everyone's glued to their phone nowadays, right? But this was different. This was a shift not in technology, but in behavior. And it was the beginning of something I couldn't ignore anymore. Phones these days, right? Always buzzing, always in someone's hand. Still, something had shifted. The energy between us felt off, different in a way I couldn't explain, but couldn't ignore either. I wasn't trying to be suspicious or controlling, but the signs were too loud to dismiss. So, one afternoon, I did something out of the ordinary. I left the office during lunch, said I'd forgotten a hard drive at home when I needed for a meeting later that day. Normally, I'd call Deborah just to let her know I was stopping by. It was a habit, a courtesy, but that day, I didn't bother. I figured I'd just slip in, grab the drive, and head back, no big deal. I reached the house, found the drive quickly, and was about to head back out when I thought I could use a coffee. There was this quiet little cafe a few blocks away that I visited often, a familiar place that always calmed me down. I drove over, parked, and went inside, nodded at the barista like usual, placed my order. A few minutes later, coffee in hand, I turned to leave. That's when I saw them. Deborah was sitting in the back corner, deep in conversation with her ex. At first, it didn't even register. I stood there, frozen, watching. They hadn't seen me yet. They looked comfortable, familiar, too familiar. I walked over, calm, quiet, looked straight at her and said just for words, "Don't come back home." She looked up, confused at first. Her mouth opened like she wanted to respond, but nothing came out. I didn't stay for an explanation. I turned around and walked away, got into my car, and drove off. The rest of the day passed in a blur. My body went through the motions, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. When I returned home that evening, she was already there, pacing. The moment she saw me, she began speaking, trying to explain. She said her ex had been going through something personal, reached out to her, and she simply offered support. Claimed it wasn't romantic, wasn't anything more than being a friend. She said it with a tone like I should be proud of her compassion, like I should see it as some admirable trait. I let her finish, no interruptions. Then I asked the one question that mattered. "Didn't you say you were done with him?" There was a pause, not long, just a beat, but it told me everything I needed to know. Before she could speak again, I asked, "Then what were you doing with him?" She stuttered, tried to string together some justification, a version of events that would make her look blameless. I wasn't interested. I didn't need more words. I didn't need excuses. What I saw was enough. To me, relationships are built on shutting emotional doors to the past. You don't leave them cracked open for people you've supposedly moved on from. That's not love. That's safety. That's fallback. And I wasn't going to be anyone's backup plan. I told her plainly, if she still had any lingering feelings, even if she wouldn't admit them, then it wasn't safe for me to keep investing in someone who might not be fully mine. She stared at me, eyes wide like she couldn't believe I was saying this out loud, but she understood. Deep down, she knew. I told her to leave, to go be with him if he mattered so much. She begged me not to end it, cried, pleaded, said she didn't mean for things to spiral this way. But I was already gone. My heart had let go the moment I saw her with him. She lingered there, hoping I'd cave, that I'd soften, but I didn't. And when she realized I meant every word, she packed some essentials and left. She went to her parents' house. I think she assumed it was just temporary, that after a few days, I'd cool off, we'd talk. But she didn't realize this wasn't an impulsive decision made in anger. It was clarity. I'd just been avoiding it until that moment forced me to see it. I waited a few days, assuming she'd return for her things, but she didn't. So, I took the next step. I packed everything she left behind and called her, asked her to come collect it. She thought it was the start of reconciliation, that we were about to talk things through. But when she arrived and saw her stuff already waiting at the door, reality sank in. She called me later. I didn't answer. She sent texts at first sad, emotional, apologetic, then angry, defensive. She accused me of being controlling, said I couldn't handle a woman with a strong voice, called me insecure. And finally, the jab meant to hurt. She told me her ex was a better man than me. I didn't reply to any of it, except once. I simply wrote, "Go be with him." That was the end. No more calls, no more texts, just silence. In the days that followed, I had time to sit with everything, to really process. And I felt a strange mixed grief, yes, but also something close to peace. I had tried. I had believed in us. But in the end, I saw things for what they really were not, what I had hoped they'd be. I came away with some truths, hard ones, but necessary. First, trust isn't something you can tape back together once it's cracked. You might try, but the fractures remain, and they'll cut you again in the same places. Second, boundaries matter. You've got to voice your discomfort early. Don't let it fester. Don't convince yourself that love alone can fix it. Third, words are cheap. What really counts are actions. She said she cut ties, but she didn't. That alone told me where I stood. Fourth, if someone is still emotionally tied to their past, they can't fully be present with you. You can't build a solid future on shaky foundations. And finally, sometimes walking away is the bravest, kindest thing you can do for yourself. I didn't walk away because I stopped loving her. I walked away because I finally started loving myself enough not to tolerate being second. So, that's it. That's what happened. If you were in my place, would you have done the same? Would you have stayed? Given her another chance? At the end of the day, relationships are built on choices. The choice to be loyal, the choice to honor someone's trust. And when those choices are broken, the only one left to make is whether you're willing to lose yourself trying to hold on or strong enough to let go.